Let's dive into the second game on the Saturday card, noon Eastern tip on CBS. We're going to hear that March Madness music, which means we're getting even closer. I know, to the big dance. Texas A&M at Purdue. I put it in quotes. It's a semi-road game with the game being played in Indianapolis. Obviously, you're going to get a conglomerate of Purdue, Boilermaker Nation at that game versus A&M fans. So take that for what it's worth. KenPom projects this game at Purdue -3. Both teams 8-2 straight up. Boilermakers coming off of the comeback win, down 5 at the break. I almost pulled the trigger on Purdue second half. I think it was -5, down 5 at the break in that game at Mackey. I'm still pissed I didn't. Maryland regressed exponentially in the second half of that game, and Purdue finally started hitting threes. But goes to show you how maybe the market underrated the Boilermakers entering the season, because even without the Zach Edey going off to the NBA, I'm glad Zach Edey is gone from college basketball, but Purdue continues to be a pain in my you-know-what with how they continue to outperform the market's expectations this season, even without Zach Edey. On the flip side, Texas A&M straight up 8-2, and they're coming off of a win on Sunday on a neutral court against a very good, borderline top 25 in my power ratings Texas Tech team. Worth noting that JT Toppin, Texas Tech's maybe their best player, didn't play. The transfer from New Mexico, or one of their best players. You look per CBB analytics, the Boilermakers have faced the best group of offenses collectively of any Division I team. So do we get positive defensive regression from Purdue defensively in this game? So conversely, does Purdue maybe see a little bit of a lift in their performance ratings, with Texas A&M ranking 289th in effective field goal percentage? On the flip side, A&M, they faced a top 60 schedule when it comes to opposing defenses. And now you get a Purdue team that ranks just inside the top, depending on the metric site. You look at, if you pull out priors, Purdue is borderline top 90 in adjusted defensive efficiency. So does A&M potentially see a lift offensively with that in mind? I also think the Aggies are going to have a big advantage on the offensive glass. Henry Coleman ranks 26th in offensive rebounding rate. This is a very experienced A&M team overall, but especially on the front line. And without Edey, Purdue does struggle to keep teams off the offensive glass. And they have yet to face front court like A&M had, like the Aggies have, whether it's Coleman or Anderson off the bench. I'm very high on A&M overall, and I'll get to that big picture here in a moment. But A&M also top 10 in adjusted defensive efficiency. We saw it against Penn State, and we've seen it historically. Athletic backcourts, more athletic backcourts than what Purdue has, can give Matt Painter's team fits. And A&M has that with Wade Taylor, the longtime A&M lead guard, and what they added as well in the transfer portal with Phelps from SMU. And post-up defense, last thing from me, Justin, post-up defense going up against Trey Kaufman-Renn, who has been a big part of Purdue outperforming the metrics entering this season. One of the best players in college basketball, not just front court pieces. A&M's post-up defense ranks in the 99th percentile per synergy. So if they slow Kaufman-Renn down from the get-go in this game and start pounding Purdue on the offensive glass, even if their shots aren't falling like they haven't been consistently all season long, I think A&M, with this line being projected on KenPom, Purdue -3, anything around Purdue -2, -3, Aggies are probably a bet for me.
Yeah, I mean, they're an interesting team for sure. I think what we have, our shot quality player data on Texas A&M paints a picture that I believe lines up pretty well with what you're saying. Henry Coleman sitting in the 97th percentile of shot quality points per possession ranks. 77 possessions, not anything crazy, but shot maker as well. Same with CJ Wilcher, who isn't exactly getting a high percentage of possessions, but Wade Taylor and Phelps both honestly draw a little bit of concern for me. I think there's a lot of possessions going to Phelps that aren't, maybe going better than I think expected right now. And, a little bit of early prowess there to start the season. And we've seen a dip, right? Texas Tech just 12 points, Wake Forest 6 points. And they're probably still going to continue to give him the ball. And I think that's a little bit worrisome. Not really developing a lot of spacing, not creating his own shot very well. Some decent success there early in the season, right? Like balled out against Lamar and Texas A&M, East Texas A&M. But I don't know if he's gonna, have the same luck here. This is a team that shot quality does see a little bit lower, ranking them outside of the top 50, right at top 50 in adjusted shot quality. The big difference being that not seeing their defense as strong as maybe will rate in KenPom, right? Sitting at a 0.96 points per possession, expected to be at 1.08. So teams shooting just 29% against them from deep. 6.9% expected to be increased from the post up. Like you said, one of the best post up defenses right now, should be at 37%. I don't know if this is going to be the exact spot where it all comes crashing down for Texas A&M in that respect, but this is definitely a spot where I think you definitely want to have some concerns. Sitting there 6-4 against the spread, shot quality, spread rating is 2-8, 26% luck differential in their record, expected to be 5-5, but Purdue's overperforming a little bit too. So this isn't exactly my favorite matchup, but I do think the relative strength of the team, I like Purdue here. I do think, we have a little bit of a disagreement. It's kind of fun. Both teams have seen, some decent shot making against, like you said, a little bit of a gauntlet from both these teams not offensively, but in terms of the schedule. But the shot making for me, what I've seen from this Texas A&M team, shot quality putting the Texas A&M team in the 4th percentile of shot making and Purdue in the 95th percentile of shot making. Both take good shots, but Texas A&M needs to take good shots or else they're going to be in trouble. So if Purdue can limit them defensively, which they're okay at doing, I do think this could get a little bit difficult. I'm not exactly sure where that's exactly going to happen. Maybe, I suppose, by forcing them into bad mid-range shots or forcing a high level of isolation shots for Purdue, and then they're just offensively sound. But yeah, this is going to be a tough one. This is going to be tough.
If Wade Taylor's chucking up contested threes, that's where you get into a bit of a pickle for Buzz Williams and this Aggies. Offense in general.
He'll happily oblige. He'll take those shots.
Absolutely, and so will Phelps.
Right.
So I don't want to call it a plug your nose play because I think the Aggies, we're, like you said, we're in disagreement, a bit of a disagreement here. I think the Aggies are, shot quality, I get it. And you have, when we talk about college basketball, you always bring up the point, take shot quality with a grain of salt because it doesn't always define the net rating of a team and the ceiling of a team long term. So I teased this earlier on, a Final Four bet that I have. Gross when you look at some of the efficiency and shot quality numbers for A&M. But I'm going to throw out A&M to make the Final Four at plus 1900 at Bet365. Very experienced team. They played a gauntlet like you've talked about. So a couple of those being on a neutral court, somewhat of a road game last week against Texas Tech. So that translates into March Madness. If we recall back in the second round or round of 32 in the Big Dance last year, losing to Houston in overtime, that game could have gone either way. And that was when Jamal Shed was healthy, mind you. Right. So a couple of reasons why I like the Aggies to make a bit of a run of the dance and why I like this number, especially before a big game, mind you, where the number could dip if A&M does pull off the upset. They create a lot of extra possessions, which is extremely valuable when your shot isn't falling, A, against Purdue, B, overall this season, and C, in the Big Dance on a neutral court. Number one in offensive rebounding rate and top 70 in turnovers forced. I know Phelps' shot selection is a bit of an issue, but where he gives Buzz Williams a much different look defensively than what they had alongside Wade Taylor for the last couple of years and Tyrese Radford, who came over with Buzz Williams from Vatech. Phelps is a defensive pest. Yep. One of the best on-ball, ball pressure guards in the country. And that gives you a completely different mindset defensively when you could force turnovers at the rate that A&M has this season. And Buzz Williams wants A&M to pressure the ball, mind you. This isn't like, okay, Phelps is going to gamble a lot. They pressure the ball and they get out and run in transition. Not the highest pace when you look at adjusted tempo. They're not going to play up tempo for a full 40 minutes, but they do selectively run, especially when they do force turnovers.
Yep.
I mentioned the schedule that they face, 15th toughest adjusted defensive efficiency overall. So the offensive ceiling, theoretically, outside of the shot quality, should go up. Top 5 in continuity, top 10 in experience, top 60 in bench minutes. So they have the depth to make a run. On a short rest scenario, you play, let's say, a Sweet 16 game on Friday, play that Elite 8 game. I know it's a long way to go looking ahead, but the opportunity bench minutes wise to make a run in March Madness, where it's difficult when you're playing on a short rotation. And I teased this to you before we got started, Justin. You look at similar efficiency profiles for A&M. Texas Tech in 2018, I was on the Red Raiders that year when they lost to Villanova, the eventual title winner in the Elite 8. Elite defense under Chris Beard and Mark Adams. That was the second go-around for the Beard-Adams tree, per se, at Texas Tech. And then Syracuse in 2013 with Michael Carter-Williams, and they made the Final Four that year. Offense and elite defense.
Yeah, look, I think you're onto an interesting, foundation for this team that can really give them the potential to make a run, right? They are shooting terribly, in my opinion. And they're not making good shots, but guess what they do really well? They get the ball, and they are going to win the possession battle. And yeah, they're high in, offensive rebounding rate, and that's probably something that you want to see start coming down, right? Because offensive rebounds are, of course, correlated to misses, and the more offensive rebounds you can get, you have to miss the ball, you have to miss the hoop to get an offensive rebound. It's just the way it works. So I would expect that to kind of drop a little bit as the shots start falling. I would, think that, when you see a team like Texas A&M, you look at what shot quality is showing on them, and, half court transition, all these things rated outside the top 250 right now, but their shot selections in the top 12%. Rebounding is super strong. They get to the line, so they don't really need to be super adept at creating offense in, the half court if they get to the line at 42% of their, possessions, and they are developing possessions at a rate that outclasses their opponents. They have strong guard play. They're keeping good care of the ball. Their turnover rate is favorable. This is, that's the type of stuff that I think can take a team that might not have the sharpshooting and carry them even in bad games. So if this Texas A&M team turns it on, who knows, right? That's a pretty worthwhile gamble. So I do think, you're probably getting one of the best points to buy them at. I don't know. I think you probably want to wait for SEC play just to make sure that they show those flashes of being able to really turn it on and overcome adversity, which they'll need to do.
But that's the other part of the conversation with A&M and the SEC overall. This is by far the best conference in college basketball.
Oh, yeah.
I already have a couple futures. Auburn to win the title, which that looks good. And
Auburn to meet Tennessee in the title game feels like it's I'm sure it'll change in a month, but that's what it feels like today.
Yeah, and I got a little bit of a long shot dart in Ole Miss, so that would be if they get to the Final Four, you hedge. Yep. Either way, my point is that best conference in college basketball, do you want to start looking at, and that's non-conference play. So if A&M, I don't think this number is going to get much bigger, but let's say you're like Justin or anybody else watching or listening to the podcast. Okay, I want to wait. Maybe you do get a better buy low number if A&M struggles in conference play, and then like we've seen in non-conference, thrives on a neutral court and somewhat of a road environment like we saw against Texas Tech and potentially Purdue, which, again, translates to the big dance.
I think also, and maybe the last point on this, but I think especially in these big powerhouse conferences where teams kind of just beat up on each other,
right,
you get such an isolated view on them, and the market can be very, very off in either direction. We've seen it a lot the other way with the Mountain West, and everyone thinks they're so good because they just beat each other up by 1 point, 2 points, these crazy good battles, and then they've all of a sudden gotten into the the non-conference play, the tournament play, and fallen apart. I think the SEC is going to be opposite, right? We're going to see these really close battles, and we're like, wait, is anyone really that good? They're just playing 1 point games. It's going to turn out everyone's really good. everyone's really good. And the SEC is going to have 6 teams into the Sweet 16, and we're going to be like, what? And we're like, yeah, we talked about this in December. This
They're going to have
is really
6
good.
teams. They're going to have 6 teams in the Final Four, and there are only 4 allowed.
Exactly. No, there's a real possibility we see 3 teams from the SEC in the Final Four. Houston sneaks in with them. Big East doesn't get any representation. Wouldn't shock me at all the way it looks right now, but college basketball looks so different every 2 weeks. This is going to be, I think that's something to look forward to because, again, conference play, you stop getting the ability to gauge the conference against other groups. And so that's what really creates a lot of value when you get to March Madness, because those who can, repiece the puzzle together and create the proper hierarchy and actually what conferences are good, what teams are actually legitimate, what wins were legitimate, that's who can come in and say, no, like this 3-point line should be 15. And then, it's a blowout. And it's like, how did you know that? It's like, well, because the SEC has been amazing all year. And you think those 1-point wins mean everyone's bad. It means everyone's good. So
100%. And last thing I promise on A&M that we'll get to.
I love it. No, SEC's great combo. So
yeah. Well, this is not SEC related, but Clemson last year, a team that I bet to get to the Final Four, they went to the Elite Eight. I decided not to hedge. Others that tailed did and made a profit. So worthwhile conversation to be had. Just 2 different teams, apples and oranges, but variance is a part of the game with college basketball teams. So you look at a team like Clemson, veteran-laden team. They had the pieces to make a run when you think about, okay, they don't turn the ball over. They were fairly elite, upper echelon in the country at limiting second chance opportunities. So conversely to A&M not the best on the defensive glass, but they generate those second chance shots. With those factors in mind and an experienced team that, like we touched on, this is the similar part to the Aggies. Dominant in non-conference play. Now we'll see if A&M beats Purdue, but Clemson was 12-1 or 11-1 in non-conference play last year, and then in conference 11-9, and they won at Alabama. So you have the resume of, okay, we can win on a neutral, we can win in road environments. We struggle in a relatively competitive ACC last season. Then come the tournament, we see them get maybe some breaks, which is a part of the tournament, and they get to the Elite Eight.
Yep.
Right?
Winning any tournament, any MTE, any March Madness, getting to the second weekend, getting to the final weekend, you don't only need to be good, you need to get lucky. And there's no doubt about it. But you are, like, winners are both really good, playing at their highest level, and then also getting lucky. And you have to sustain that for multiple games. So I don't know. That's why, across sports, usually like player incentives are tied to things that you can really control, like what place in the standings you get rather than how it really goes in the playoffs. Because basketball is like the one sport where playoffs can actually be truly predictive, but still it's just one game. I wish March Madness was a series of 3. How cool would that be? I don't want to expand it.
I don't want it.
I know. But like, imagine the idea of having like a little bit more. I love the NBA. I think the NBA playoffs, people hate it, but like it is the most predictive playoffs there is. The winner of the NBA championship is the winner. Like, I don't think any other pro sport has a better claim to saying we're the best team because of how sporadic and variable other sports series are. Like, baseball's crazy. Football is one game. College basketball, one game. I know,
but that's the best part.
I know it's the best part. It is the best part by far. But the best part of it can be that sometimes the best team doesn't win. That's okay. That's sports, right? That's why we love it, because if the best team won every time, just wrap it up and hand the next 10 World Series to the Dodgers, right? But that's not what is happening. It's what makes sports so beautiful. But it is definitely, antithetical with what is creating an environment to actually select the best. March Madness does not do that, and that is why we love it. That's okay, but that's college basketball. It's crazy. It's craziness. And if you're still here hanging out with Eli and us, that very, very well. So.
That rant presented to you by the Yankees not re-signing Juan Soto, I believe. I know. We don't want to talk about it and probably have to move on to the next game. But with that in mind,
composure is a professional aspect I try to have. So.